Welcome back to the Maine State of Mind podcast. I'm Justin Soderberg, your co-host, and I'll be joined today by Adam Morrisette, my co-host for the podcast. This episode is a hostful podcast, so there's no guests. There's just Adam and I bantering back and forth on a specific subject. And this week's subject happens to be Disney Plus. We were going to focus on a specific show on Disney Plus, but however, we decided that maybe we're not more of a review podcast; we're more of a overall podcast. So let's talk about the generic Disney Plus experience as a whole, and how much we like it, and how much what are things we like, what are things we dislike, and so on with that. So we talked Star Wars episode stuff, we talked Marvel stuff, we talked generic stuff about Disney Plus. We really enjoyed this podcast to bring it to you this week. So thanks again, everybody, for listening. We have our podcast is available on Spotify, Apple, as well as on YouTube for the video portion. You can also like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram for all the updates of the podcast and what guests are coming up and what guests we've had. So please go out there, share us, like us, follow us, and subscribe to us for wherever podcasts are found. This is an episode of the Maine State of Mind focused on Disney Plus and mainly the Marvel and the Star Wars part of it, but in general as well. So enjoy, everybody. Another episode of the Maine State of Mind podcast. Thank you. I think we're good. I think we're recording. I think it doesn't really matter at this point. I just smoothly roll into this thing, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
I used to listen to a podcast that it was called the Nerdist podcast. Now it's called ID10T, and it's Chris Hardwick. He used to just do that. He just press record when you walk in the room.
That's great.
And he'd sit down. You're like, "Hey, can I get a coffee? Can we get some coffees?" And they just start, and that's how the podcast would start.
That's great.
And the person like, "Are you recording?" "Oh, we've been recording for 5 minutes, man." It's like because this is a lot of times like we did before we started recording is you'd end up saying something that should have been said on air, and you didn't, and now he was able to capture those moments. I said sometimes I think people actually were mad, like, "Oh, I didn't know that. Can you delete that?
Can you edit that?
Can you edit that out?" Like, yes, we can edit that out. And then you'd hear like a blank, and then they'd go into it. But yeah, we're back again. It's been a little while. I mean, last time we recorded together, you came here. We didn't have a baby in the other room. Now there's a baby in the other room.
It's true.
But you also recorded from Indiana,
Illinois.
Same. Is it weird for people in Maine to think that Illinois and Indiana are the same place?
There's about 6 states there that you can all lump together into the same.
That's just.
I'm just kidding to all my Midwestern friends. Totally kidding.
It's true though. I'm always do that. I think whenever someone says they're from Illinois, I always say they're from Indiana. Whenever someone says they're from Indiana, I say they're from Illinois. So it's not. It just happens to be that I always get them twisted. But you were in Illinois.
Yeah. We were
family got a new dog.
We did get a new dog, and my brother-in-law is moving to Spain, and they had 3 dogs, and 3 was too many. So the youngest is come to live with Annie and I.
Which is awesome because that's the picture you sent me of them 2 together. Look like they've been living together forever.
Oh, they're hilarious.
Okay, that's awesing. Because your other dog also wasn't very good around a lot of dogs. Is that true? Or?
He's just exceptionally weird in all situations, including with other dogs,
including with you two,
and including with us. Yes.
But no, that's awesome. So I'm glad we're back in person. But Adam and I talked about doing shows like this one where it's like, we talk. So we used to work together at Orner Brewing, or we do work together at Orner Brewing Company. But back, 18 months ago, we used to just sit at the bar before we'd open. And you're opening and I'm there doing my thing. And we're just going, "Hey, have you seen that new Mandalorian show? Or have you seen that new whatever?" And we talk and stuff. And you get these like good 20, 30 minutes of great conversation that you'd be like, if you were to press record on this,
exactly,
it would have been awesome for other people to listen to. However, you didn't have the opportunity to do that. And so I wanted to do some episodes like this. So I texted, we have a Slack channel. I was talking to Adam on the Slack channel. I'm like, what if we do a review of the first few episodes of Loki, which Loki's been amazing. If anybody's seen it. Before we go any further, I actually wanted to say, I forgot to say this, is that we're not going to try to spoil anything if we've seen some of these shows. But just so you know, if you hear us talking about something, I'm not going to get crap for me spoiling something on a TV show when this episode is titled Disney Plus and what's going on and things like that.
Exactly.
So like, you need to be aware that if we start talking about Loki and I accidentally spoil something, that's not my fault.
Yeah.
Okay. So you don't watch all Disney Plus shows and then watch this or listen to this. But I was like, I want to talk about it. I don't think we're a review kind of podcast. I don't think we can actually, I don't think I have the mindset, like my Friends from Work podcast, they were on back in January and they do a podcast about the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yep.
and they review the movies afterwards, and they have this whole ranking system, and they've been doing a Loki podcast, and every time there's an episode of the Loki show, they review it and talk about it, and they
Sure.
have guests on about the show, and it's awesome. They're just way more analytical about it than I am, just being like, hey, did you see that? Like at the end of Mandalorian, like Luke Skywalker was back, and you're like, like you're all fanboy about it.
Exactly.
They're more like, did you hear the music in the background, and
Yeah.
you know the tone of this and that? I'm like, I just don't think I'm very like that.
Or I always love to listen to the episodes where they recap like every Easter egg, because like we were just talking about, like I love Marvel comics. I have my whole life.
Yes.
But I admittedly my deep knowledge of it isn't there. So like I love the recaps where they're like, this actually refers to a 1973 comic. Like I love that stuff.
And you can look it up.
Yep.
It's awesome. Like, oh, this is cool, or buy the book or buy a comic book or whatever to go with it. But like to me, it's there's a lot of times I'll watch it and I'll go, oh my God, I got that. But then there's other times where I have to go, who was, and I'm a big Marvel fan.
Yep.
I still have to go on my phone and be like, well, who was that? Like, I know it was supposed to be an awe moment, but like, who actually is that going to be? Or,
exactly.
You know, again, speaking about Loki, there's the female Loki that shows up and someone's like, well, it's female Loki from another universe, or it's Enchantress, or it's, and I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
So sometimes I have to look that stuff up. So I thought it's very hard for me to be here and for us to do an episode that's basically on specifics of a show when I'm still myself trying to comprehend what the show is even about and what's going on, and so on. So I wanted to do it because I really love the show. Loki's now, I mean, WandaVision was probably my favorite of the Marvel shows. Now it's probably up there with Loki. It's a really good show. And then I thought, well, maybe we'll do the first few episodes and review that, and then do another one later on, review the last and whole. But then also, after I thought about it, is that if anybody's watching the Loki show, episode 3 really kind of was boring. Not boring, but like it stalled a little bit.
It was, and it's funny that like that night, my wife's cousin texted me and he's like, man, episode 3, I'm nervous.
Yes.
And then like her brother texts me, then Annie watches it with me and she's like, I don't know. And then man, yeah.
And so, but I was like, okay, so we couldn't split the show in half and be like, let's watch 1 through 3 and review it. Because after the 3rd episode, we'd be like, well, this sucks, but we know seeing episode 4 that it gets better.
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't want to fake it and be like, oh, it's not so good. I wonder what episode 4 is gonna be like, even though we've seen it. So then I was like, well, if we did episodes 1 through 4, that's also weird because there's 6 episodes. So
exactly.
So then to me, I was like, Adam, let's just talk overall about the Marvels and Star Wars and things on Disney Plus and the experience we've been having with it. It got launched in 2019, which for them, I'm sure is freaking awesome because of streaming service being launched a few months before the world came to an end. It's probably for them the greatest thing that's ever happened.
And the streaming service with like arguably the best franchises around right now. I mean,
the most bingeable, the things that people want to watch over and over and over again. The number of times I've watched the Marvel movies on Disney Plus over and over and over again is fast. Honestly, it's probably need help how much that times I need that.
Funny, I'll see these lists come out and I'll say to Annie, like, this is too much, man. I can't handle this much Star Wars. And then I start watching the next one and I'm like, nope, I'm in. Well,
but yes and no. And so I completely agree with you. I'm saying the same thing when I'm looking at this list. Adam, I have lists in front of us about what's coming up and what's been on. But then again, I'm thinking to myself, I was talking to someone, Scott and Dana, who come to OBC, and there's 4 more Marvel movies coming out this year. So they're to the theaters, 4 more Marvel movies, and it's July. So thinking about that, that's like over half the year's over, and we still have 4. So if you would extrapolate that into a normal year, there would have been 8 movies this year. And that's freaking insane. And then you add in all these shows. And then you add in other things that you want to watch and listen to and so on. And so to me, I'm like, it is going to get to a point where we are overwhelmed about it. But I don't think I'm ever going to be overwhelmed about it.
That's why I'm starting to feel the same way. I'm kind of like, nope, keep going.
And the benefit to us, I think Disney Plus has done the right thing, in my opinion, and has released it weekly. So where we went to the Netflix binge things where it's just all the episodes were at once. Now they're doing the weekly thing. So it also gives you the ability, because for a little while there it was like Taylor and I were watching something that was on Plex probably, but some sort of binge show. But also we were watching WandaVision. So it was like, okay, we could watch WandaVision, then we can go back to our other show and watch that show for a little bit. But we know we can't watch the next episode of WandaVision until next week. So that to me, or it was Mandalorian or something like that. And so that to me is pretty cool. It gives the ability for you and I to talk midweek and be like, hey, did you see this episode? I wonder what's going to happen. You wouldn't do that with a movie. You wouldn't pause a movie in the middle of it and be like, hey, let's watch the first hour of the next Avengers movie. And then pause it and wait 2 weeks. Let's discuss what's going to happen. And then we're going to finish it.
Yeah, no, my wife and I have talked about that endlessly. Where like, I feel like I just in general started to reach a point where the dropping the whole season, I was losing interest like
Mhm.
every 6 months. Like it could be like whatever, Stranger Things season 3. And I was just like, you know what, man, that just sounds tedious. And somebody's going to watch it the first night. There's going to be spoilers the next day.
Yeah.
And since HBO really went with that, and then like
Yes.
Disney went with that model, man, I'm back in again. It seemed like that whole waiting is the point. Right?
Yes, exactly. And it could be a different thing. It could be one of those things that you want you as a movie. The whole idea was written as a movie. Like you went and you and I are gonna write a movie together. And then someone like HBO is like, that'd be good as a miniseries. But then they're like, but it doesn't make sense to make it weekly. So there are certain things that makes it like, okay, you need to have more hours of screen time.
Yep.
But also doesn't need to be a movie, so you kind of have to make it a miniseries and release it all at once. But yes, for most of the stuff that I like, Star Wars, comic book related things, has to be weekly, because I feel like I don't think I would have been as much of a Walking Dead fan or all those things if it happened to be like the cliffhangers at the end of the show were like the next day you found out more about it.
You mentioning Walking Dead's a good example, and you've probably the thing I find with those delayed episodes too is I'm a lot more forgiving with story, because like in a 1-2 hour movie, like I'm noticing every little plot break, every little hole. But in a series, they've got a little correction time, maybe, or they've at least got that by that time you're onto a new story. And it's just like has completely changed the enjoyment.
It has. And I don't think we would have been able to do this years ago, because I don't think people would have put money into what they put. No one put this much money into a TV show on Fox. And one of the things I was thinking about this morning is that it adds to the value of the big screen things, or the comic books, or the audiobooks, or the scripted podcasts, or the surrounding things that go around these things for Star Wars or Marvel. We're going to focus on is that Fox owned the rights to X-Men, right, for a long time. And you never saw a Professor X TV show on Fox Network. No. And then said, okay, then we're going to put the movies out there to help like tell Professor X's story. And I said to myself, I said, probably the reason why that was is because there was 24 episode seasons. And it's a lot of television for Professor X. Whereas on Disney Plus, they're like 6 episode seasons, or like with WandaVision, it was like a 9 or 10 one, because of it was 30-minute episodes. Is the whole reason they did it. But these 45-minute to an hour long shows are 6 episode miniseries. And so it's like you can have this ability to show something to someone without having to put it on the big screen, and have someone commit to going to the movie theater and all that stuff. Have 6 hours of television to tell a whole story, to help further the cause of the Thor Love and Thunder movie that hasn't, or the next, Doctor Strange movie, or whatever it is. They can tell things in this format a lot better than if they put it on the big screen. I just think that's one of the things that I will always think that Disney Plus did, and it was a pioneer of, whereas like Netflix pioneered the binge watching, really, if you think about it. But Disney Plus pioneered the.
Oh yeah. Annie and I watched Loki 4 last night, and that's what we were talking about. And I was saying, in retrospect, one of the things that's really been interesting to me, and I've generally overall been impressed with how they started the Marvel universe, grew it. But it's brilliant because as a comic fan, you start seeing the model they followed, right? Which is individual comic storylines that then build towards a big crossover event, and then go back to their storylines. And that's so simple, but like you said, the fact that somebody somewhere, like, which was probably Kevin Feige, that was like, why don't we do it like the comics do it?
Exactly.
And it's like immediately, because I see it with Star Wars, they're not doing that, and I'm like, man, like you're missing something.
Even the other comic book company.
No, exactly.
DC, I see the other. There's multiple, but the other big one, the big two, DC's the same thing, where they're not even doing that, and they've been doing that for years as well, with the New 52 and all these different. I don't know a lot about DC because I don't like DC, but like. But it's Marvel's been able to do that. And what's cool about your connection to the comic book thing is so if you think about, let's go back to MCU's, phase 1 through 3 or whatever, that there's the Iron Man movie and the Thor movie and all that stuff, which would be the Iron Man comic book and the Thor comic book. And then the Avengers movie would be basically like, let's give an example, because there's a show coming up on Disney Plus called Secret Invasion. Secret Invasion. So there was all these different comic books, and then there was the Secret Invasion 8-part series that was his own thing. And that's what the kind of like the anchor movie is, like the Avengers was. And and so you'll have those offshoot comic books, and then the mini series comic book that goes together, which is the anchor movie at the end. Excuse me, Endgame was that for the end of all of Marvel phases 1 through 3, the Infinity Saga. But then you have these things that you have ability to do one shots, and that's kind of what I feel like these mini series are on Disney Plus, where you have the movies are their own comic book titles. The big movie is the miniseries comic book that goes with it.
Exactly.
And then the TV shows are the one shots that just give you a bunch of information you need to know
Exactly.
to support the rest of the story arc. And they've been able to do that with and other shows, like things that I don't think I ever would have given craps about. WandaVision. When I first saw that thing on there, and as a big Marvel fan, I was like, really? Wanda and Vision?
What are they going to do with this?
What are they going to do with this? And then when they did it, I was like, oh my God, it was good.
And what was brilliant is I keep using my wife as an example who
loves who else do you watch TV with though?
Who is like a great example though, because she's likes Marvel movies. Yeah. She does not read comics. Yeah. She doesn't know anything of the backstory. So she's always a good example for me of kind of how these movies work. And what I love is the way Disney's done it. Like she can jump in anywhere and it's easy to figure out what's going on. Mm-hmm. And that's, again, sounds really like just simple, but that's not how it's done.
No.
And so for her, she jumps in and she's like, okay, I know what's going on.
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah, exactly. Well, your wife's also a pretty smart person. So it's not like, I don't think everybody's like that, but I think it's a lot easier for people who are not like that to understand.
If she was here, she would say, you forget the part where you talk at me for an hour a day about Marvel every day, and then Star Wars, and then crypto. And so I do leave that conveniently out of the narrative most of the time.
But I mean, but it's true. Taylor's the same way with that. That's something that Marvel's been able to do. And she does like one of her other favorite movies recently over the past 5 or 10 years is Suicide Squad. DC's not obviously the newer one. She'll probably like that one even better because she's a big Guardians of the Galaxy fan. James Gunn is doing this new Suicide Squad. But that if you should, some of her favorite movies in more recent time is like Thor's Ragnarok. So it's like Marvel's obviously doing something right. If that my wife, who does not give a crap about comic books in the first place, one of her favorite movies right now is Ragnarok. Like that says a lot.
That's really funny.
Because Ragnarok's also an obscure comic book.
That's how I got Annie into the Marvel movies. I was like, you got to see this one. Just promise me you'll see this one. And she was like, all right, I'm in.
It's like, look, X-Men is not obscure because it's a historical, like very mainstream storylines. Yes. The X-Men storylines. Ultron, Age of Ultron, all those ones are main storylines.
Yep.
I'm sorry, but Ragnarok was a pretty obscure storyline, and they made one of the most amazing Marvel movies ever out of that.
Agree.
And then you have the Loki character again, still being good, and then they have a Loki TV show. And again, Loki was fun to me, but Paul Eaton and I did our poll list about our favorite villains.
Sure.
And Loki wasn't like on my radar really. Like Loki was fun. I think he's great, but he's just, I don't know if he's like, he just never was up there. I've fallen back in love, and I love Tom Hiddleston, so don't get me wrong about that. But like Loki to me now is because the character that he is in this show is more of that anti-hero too, though. Like he's more of that person who thinks they're doing well. Some of the best villains out there, the ones that like Thanos, for an example, is my favorite. I have him right over here. Thanos is my favorite. It's because he thinks in his mind. His mindset is that he's doing the right thing because he wants to help people. I mean, he does kill people and all that stuff, but his whole overarching thing about snapping and getting rid of half the population was so that the rest of the world could continue to move on without him and flourish without those people. And so he thinks he's doing good. And it's the same thing with Loki a lot of times. There's some times where he's just doing something because he thinks it's for the better of the mankind or God kind or whatever you want to think. But he's just being an awful person. He has just killed people too and all that stuff too. But like he's something about this Tom Hiddleston's character and the writing in the show has made me want to like him more. And I've done that with everything. I could care two craps about Falcon. I liked Winter Soldier. Winter Soldier was one of my favorite Marvel movies that came out. And I liked the way but Falcon could care less about.
Right.
Vision I liked. Again, Wanda Maximoff, I could take her or leave it. But they made me love all these characters over again with these TV shows.
That's what I was getting ready to say that I think spot on again with what I've enjoyed with, I'd say Disney overall, but especially the Marvel is they're not afraid to modernize the character in a way that makes it or him or her more relatable. And, we've seen that in some of these shows, like, well, you just said like Loki, right? And I mean, I think there's Loki and Marvel, and then there's this larger resurgence now in general of an interest in Norse culture through shows like Vikings and, and then we've got Neil Gaiman, wrote Norse mythology. So what's interesting though, is I think that to a lot of people is kind of like, so they've now like put Loki in a much more human position. Like, let's kind of leave that dense Norse thing behind. And that's brilliant. Like,
it's fascinating. It makes me love, like I said, it makes me go, well, like I said about the whole Thor Ragnarok, we're waiting with bated breath for Thor: Love and Thunder to come out because it's same writer, same director,
Right.
same group of people making Thor: Love and Thunder that they did that made Ragnarok. So we're hoping to get a very similar movie. But now with watching the Loki show, I'm like, now I'm
Yeah.
really wanting to see this. What's going to happen in
Yep.
this next movie, which has done amazing. This same thing with Mandalorian. So first of all, when they launched, not to jump from Marvel to Star Wars, but I think
Actually,
that's the
no,
best
you
way we
just
should
did a
do.
perfect segue.
I
So go
think
ahead.
that the way that I think the smartest thing that Marvel ever did was hired originally
Yes.
John Favreau to start off Iron Man back in the day
Yep.
because it kicked off
They got in
the
early.
greatest
Yep.
franchises in in movies to me. Because again, a big Marvel fan, so the scale's a little weighted because I'm a big Marvel fan, but I think they've done a great job with 23 movies and so on.
Well,
But
and like you said, with you shifting it to Star
yes,
Wars, I mean, my immediate reaction to what I just said with Marvel is with Star Wars, I'm still everything being like, so this is going to end up being about Luke
yeah,
Skywalker, right?
like
So see, Marvel early on learned like, hey, let's not do that.
yes, let's not do
And
one
let's,
character.
like,
We
for
always go
instance,
back to.
let's not do Avengers 2, Avengers 3, Avengers 4 as the main movie every time.
Yes,
Like,
yes,
let's have bigger events.
yes.
But as
Or
you said,
like Iron Man's dead. Everybody who hasn't, I mean,
yes,
Endgame came out
he
a
is.
number of years ago, so you
Yeah,
can
yeah.
you screw off if you don't know that already. But Iron Man's dead. They're not immediately going, how do we get Iron Man back into this thing?
Exactly.
Like what they do with Luke Skywalker over
Well,
and
and
over,
as we
again.
said, Mandalorian, which you just mentioned, and I literally watched it this morning before I came here again, the final episode of season 2. And like I said, for nostalgia, man, it scratched the itch, but it's still that Luke Skywalker after 2 seasons again.
Which one of the things we I think the things we praised Mandalorian about. One of the things that I loved about Mandalorian is I'm a big Star Wars fan. Loved the original 3, and then I am still one of those ones. Maybe it's because I am a more fringe Star Wars fan that had no issues with the next 3, and that not no issues, but like I still love them.
Sure.
I hold them in high regard. I still think they're some of the greatest movies, and it's probably because the storyline they're based around, not the movies themselves, but because it's telling. Like even if a Marvel movie comes out that's mediocre, I'm still gonna love it because it's based in the universe that I like.
Exactly.
And then the last 3 are pretty good too. Again, it all depends on your view on Star Wars and the history and all that stuff too. But one of the things I was saying about Mandalorian was they made a show that was like made me love Star Wars. Yes. It had nothing to do with anything. I mean, I think I can't remember. I won't watch season 1 in a while, but they mentioned Darth Vader at some point, maybe, or they mentioned something about the original Skywalker movies. But they don't like. It's almost like walking through a hall and seeing a picture of Darth Vader on the wall, and that kind of is the homage to Darth Vader. But then you just keep walking. It's like it's not. It's like in Marvel, it's the same thing with like Spider-Man. Far From Home, they have like that opening clip where they have the montage for the death of Tony Stark, but then they basically not move on because it's obviously a part of the storyline in there, but like so Tony Stark doesn't come up over and over and over again, pictures of him. It's like in the background, you're like, oh my god, that was Luke Skywalker. That would be cool.
Yes.
Whereas they did that for the first season and a half, and at the very end of the last season, they're just like, oh, by the way, here's Skywalker.
Right. I mean, again, when I look at I just even thought like, even if they had just ended it with, you knew it was Luke Skywalker,
but didn't actually show
but you never saw him, and they don't talk about it ever again. That would have been one of like those nerdgasms where you're like, oh my God, that was Luke, and they're never going to say anything. Like, and Marvel would do that. They would do some like crazy thing that,
and to me, it was even worse because it's like Mark Hamill doesn't look like that anymore. So to me, it was like that level, the step above it. I think I'll do a thing that they do in the show, the podcast, Friends from Work. Anything negative I say about Star Wars, Disney Plus, or Marvel in this thing is really taken with a grain of salt.
Oh yeah,
because I think there hasn't been something that either one of those things in my lifetime they've done wrong. And so, like to me, when I say something negative about these things, it's really kind of like, eh. But The Mandalorian, the same thing. It was like they made a character that basically didn't look like that anymore. Like putting it to be different if they were like on Rise of the Skywalker and those ones where they made Mark Hamill old. So Luke Skywalker's old. They took him and they made him lose weight because he was he wasn't in shape. But basically said this is what Luke Skywalker would look like now.
Right.
They didn't CGI him into a character.
Exactly. And that's what I was going to say is like, that ending, had we never seen him in the new trilogy, that one little appearance would have blown people's minds. But we, like you said, we just came off of the like authentic older Mark Hamill.
Yes.
So,
which is funny because we were watching Big Bang Theory over again. I watched Big Bang Theory. Taylor and I had watched up to like season 9 maybe.
Yep.
And then we just watched all of the whole thing as we're trying to like watch these half-hour comedy shows and stuff like that. And Mark Hamill does Sheldon and Amy's wedding as he performs the wedding later on.
Yep.
It's older Mark Hamill. And to me, it's like when you used to see older Mark Hamill before the last 3 movies came out for Star Wars, it was just older Mark Hamill. Now it's like I picture myself saying it's older Luke Skywalker. Actually, like because we don't, he doesn't look like Mark Hamill from the original movies. So when you see him as an old man, you're just like, oh, it's older Mark Hamill.
Exactly.
It's Mark Hamill as an old man. Now when I see him, I'm like, oh my god, it's Luke Skywalker. But they just what they can do, and so back with the not Kevin Feige, the Jon Favreau thing is Disney Plus was like, okay, we're gonna launch something. We're not ready to do a Marvel thing yet. Let's do a Star Wars thing. Who can we get to do this the right way? And what they do, they hired Jon Favreau.
Yes.
And then he took it and did a grand slam.
Yep.
And it was some of the best TV I've seen in years.
Agreed.
And they made you want to watch every season.
Yep.
What I will say is that something that, again, Star Wars or no one else has been able to grasp other than Marvel is some casting. Like I think the Mandalorian, he was cast perfectly. I think he is a good dude. I think the acting, you have to be good. You never see his facial expressions.
Oh, exactly.
He's in a helmet the whole time. But some of the B characters, sometimes I feel like they throw some people in there and you're just like, why? Why did you go this route? Whereas Marvel's, I feel like, has always been like their casting is what made the movie.
The casting, and like you said, I feel like for the most part, when the Marvel Cinematic Universe brings a minor little character in, it's still important.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that in like 2 years, that character is going to pop up in another storyline. And with the Star Wars ones, I'm kind of like, I don't think I'm going to see that again.
No. And sometimes you're like, why did you cast this person? What's his face? The redheaded comedian.
Bill Burr.
Bill Burr. Why was he in it? Like, I understand, like, when they did the new Star Wars movies, like Kevin Smith and a couple of other people were droids and were stormtroopers. Okay, that's fine. Pay homage to one of your favorite movies of all time and let them be in this movie. But hiring a comedic actor to play
comedic actor it was him playing himself
basically
as a Star Wars character,
And so and I honestly never have ever been a Gina Carano acting fan. I think she was excellent MMA fighter. She was excellent person. She could get in the ring and she could kick some ass. But when her playing in the character she was playing in the movie as like the show, I mean, she could have been anybody else you could have hired to do the same thing. And part of me believes that Marvel has taken opportunities and chances and people that no one ever knows. They've been in some things, or even directors or producers or writers are people who have not done anything else. Like Taika Waititi did a couple small things that he's really known for now. But if he never did Thor Ragnarok, I don't think he'd be as known as he is now for those things. Like Hunt for the Wilder People and what they do in the Shadows and Jojo Rabbit.
Oh, absolutely.
Jojo Rabbit might have put him in the category, but like the idea that they've been able to pick people that aren't big people. Yeah. And so they could have taken someone else other than Bill Burr or Gina Carano and put them in there and probably been just as fine.
And I know there is talk about it, but like Timothy Olyphant that was in, like, done right, he could be amazing. Mm-hmm. But the character needs a little work, I feel like, and fleshed out. But he's been great in some other shows, like Santa Clara Diet or whatever. He was fantastic. Mm-hmm. So those are the ones where I'm like, but is that just going to go away now? And that was just a weird one-off thing. And so, I'm interested to see if they are like planting the seeds for a more fleshed out universe.
Yes.
But
well, I think that's what they could do. And that's something I will say with Marvel going the opposite route, or by supplementing their movies with TV shows on Disney Plus is excellent. I think what Star Wars basically needs to do for the next 15 years is just go to Disney Plus. Like, I feel like they could probably skip the motion picture part of it.
They almost certainly could.
We've motion pictured the world out with Star Wars. Because again, it's different than the Marvel Cinematic Universe, unless they were to go to a Star Wars Cinematic Universe and do movies that are a Darth Vader movie and a Luke Skywalker movie and a R2-D2 movie and they went that route, I'd be more okay with it. But if they're gonna do big picture anchor movies, Star Wars Episode 10, go to a TV show, do your Mandalorians, do what's coming up here. I mean, there's
and I think something
1, 2, 3, 4, 6 more shows coming out.
Oh yeah. And I think something you hit on is that, I mean, it's they're still so stuck in nostalgia in the Star Wars universe. Like, you look at the list and it's like, Lando's on there, Obi-Wan's on there, Ahsoka. I mean, I know she's really new to a lot of people. She is not new in the Star Wars universe. Mm-hmm. So like, I get that Marvel, but I feel like a lot of times they aren't like I feel like there's always immediacy to the Marvel movies. They're always going somewhere.
Yes.
Like, and it
Yes.
doesn't stop. The
Yes.
Star Wars ones, I'm like, Mandalorian, okay, cool. Like, what else is happening?
Exactly. Like, but part of it also is, I think some people like it's the I like to explain it this way. My dad's a congregational pastor, and there's obviously a lot of history there, right? So he does one small thing in his old church in Connecticut,
Sure.
one small thing.
Yep.
And as the person who's been there for 50 years goes, you can't do that. You move that. That's been there since I was a kid. And it's like, why can't I do this? Star Wars, I feel like it's one of those things also. It's like, hey, we're going to do this. We're going to skip, and we're not going to talk at all about the Skywalker movies.
Yep,
that whole thing is done. We're going to move on. The universe eventually moved on. It didn't stop after this, or prequel. And that's the other one that's there. I think on the development series, Rangers of the New Republic.
Yes.
That I think they may dive heavily into in the future, which is the High Republic comic books that have come out. They did that over the IDW did some, Marvel did some. There was books that came with it, and there was this huge resurgence for that. That's where I think they'll go.
I think you're spot on, because I think what they're wanting to do is something that has the feel of the old Republic, but not rehashing that. Yes. So they're going to create like a new High Republic that's reminiscent of the old Republic. So they get the new with the old, which that's fantastic. And then
go from there.
Never talk about Luke Skywalker again.
And I don't like some of these things. You have to kind of like,
sorry, Mark Hamill.
Yeah, bring those people back. Like some of those older people, like my dad, for example. Like he watched Star Wars probably in the theaters when it first came out in the 70s.
Yep.
Like, great. So maybe some of these, the Book of Boba Fett coming out in December, maybe the Obi-Wan Kenobi in 2022.
Yep.
Maybe the Lando and the show and date TVA. Maybe those are to grab those older people to say, okay, we're still talking to you,
right?
But this is not the future. I want you to know the Obi-Wan Kenobi story, like more about it.
Yes.
But let's talk quickly about it, one-off miniseries, 6 episodes or whatever it is, and then move on. And then the next thing is what's coming out.
And it sounds like, and that's why I'm starting to hope, I'm starting to see like glimmers of what Marvel does. And that's like, I mean, as I just said about moving forward, let me completely backtrack now and say that I like am almost like giddy about Obi-Wan having a stand, and with Hayden Christensen coming back, because I think there's nobody in like the history of movie cinema that deserves a second shot at their role with quality, amazing directors. Because I think all of us know that in the first movie, that was him acting exactly to the direction he was given, which was poor.
Yes. But yes, having that ability and having that platform, they're not going to make a Obi-Wan Kenobi movie.
No, why would you?
No. And so like this, let's do it. It could be 4 episodes. We don't know. It could be 6 episodes. Could be 8, 10, whatever it is. But like do it like a movie, and we'll get that. But then move on. 5 years from now, 6 years from now, I don't want to be talking about that. I don't want to talk about Iron Man anymore.
That's what I'm saying. Like, let's let that put the whole Obi-Wan Darth Vader thing to bed with Luke Skywalker. Like, and then I'm totally in. But
well, you're gonna put Luke Skywalker Obi-Wan on bed together? Wow.
Yeah, it's gonna be hot.
Is Boba Fett gonna watch or?
Oh yeah, quietly.
So yeah, so
drawing in his book.
So the Star Wars that Marvel. So what I'll say, what our benefit we'll get out of Disney Plus is that Marvel and Disney are now one company, and so is Star Wars. So Star Wars was purchased and Marvel was purchased, and we have this Disney Plus. No other network, I say network streaming service, has done what they've been able to do with these things, which kind of sucks for me because I'm like thinking to myself, like, I knew Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles series would be awesome with like dark, like a Netflix style, but it's not going to happen because IDW and Nickelodeon don't have their own thing, and it's so to me, it's like there are some Walking Dead, for an example, or I mean, Invincible just had a new show on Amazon that I heard is pretty good. Just seeing Robert Kirkman, Walking Dead writer again.
I've heard it's fantastic.
So, but putting some of those things in there and having that, but there's no. The downside of Disney Plus is that it's Disney only. So for me, Marvel and Star Wars is going to be amazing, but then there's other obscure things that I like around it. Keanu Reeves has a new book out called Berserker. I'm reading a book called Crossover and one called Undiscovered Country. And those are all Image comic books. It's almost like they're likely going to get TV shows at some point, but they're not going to be on this. And so to me, I'm always going to go, they're just not going to be as good. Like they're not going to have the backing that Disney Plus has been able to give Marvel and Star Wars.
No, I mean, the scale of the Disney thing is like blows my mind. I mean, to have Star Wars and Marvel is like.
Well, I mean, I know I looked at it before. I know Disney purchased Marvel for $4 billion a number of years ago. I forget what Disney purchased Lucasfilms for. but it's I know it's not cheap.
No.
Disney to acquire. Oh, that was $4 billion as well. $4 billion for Lucasfilm, which to me is
how
even
much
more.
they're going to generate from that. I mean, oh my god,
that was 9 years ago.
Yeah, and that's unbelievable.
And then it purchased Marvel. That was, Marvel. $4 billion again. So think about it, and that was in 2000. That's not right. When was it? It wasn't all these articles. Why does it? 2009. I saw this article headline, New York Times. Disney buys Marvel and it's 5,000 characters for $4 billion. So 7 years later, so technically, I mean, obviously,
right?
They purchased Lucasfilm for more in a sense because 7 years go by and $4 billion. They're both $4 billion. But also, if you think about it per character, Marvel was sold for a lot less than Lucasfilm because Lucasfilm again is Star Wars.
Oh my god!
I mean, they are Indiana Jones and there's other people that are in Lucasfilm, but they bought Star Wars basically. Yep. And so there's that aspect too. Is just the fact that they spent $8 billion on these people and they've already made all the money back.
Oh gosh, without a doubt.
Just with the Marvel movies and the Marvel movies and the Star Wars movies have been released since they purchased them.
Yep.
They've made their money back off the $8 billion already.
And it's like the thing I think it's so fun with the Disney Plus involved too is, like I said, we went from like the movie based with like the individual movie lines and the crossovers, and then after a while it was kind of like that's neat, but like then they went to the series and I'm like, man, that's amazing. And with Disney too, I feel like there's augmented reality coming. There is.
Well,
because they're the only ones that can push out a product like that.
And we've only talked about so far with about the live action shows. I mean, first of all, Star Wars. One thing Star Wars always has done pretty well is they've done some pretty good animated shows. Clone Wars, those shows were Rebels. They're all pretty good animated shows. So the animated aspect of it has always been pretty good. Same thing with if I will give DC credit for. DC hasn't made very good movies, like full-on big screen movies. But if you look at a lot of their back catalog of animated DC movies, they've done a very good job at animated DC movies. Have. Speaking of Mark Hamill, he actually played Joker.
The Joker, yep.
But also they had Bad Batch that came out for Star Wars. Marvel has What If that's coming out this summer, which is the animated series that has based on the comic book. What if Sharon Carter was Captain America, not
which I have to say is like another one that I was giddy when I was like, Justin knows I was in Illinois and I was packing up some old stuff. I brought all my comic books back with me, and I was going through them, and what was I just talking about? I just lost my train of thought. That's huge.
Phantom Star Killer by Joseph Schmalke of Black Caravan comic books. But I meant to bring it to me to get signed because he was at Galactic Comics last weekend. That's awesome. And I forgot he's going to be at Comic-Con, but none of them were this big though?
No, they weren't. But yeah, I don't remember. I was going to tell you something about those. That was it. And then you go through your comic books like you do. And like I have all my ones that are like bagged and boarded. There's like one weird jammed in section that's What If, because I'd read them so many times it didn't matter anymore. And so that's what I was telling. I was like, I guess that's the best sign that this is what I used to read all the time. So like the What If thing to me it's awesome. So one of my most valuable comic books that I own right now, or I would say valuable, one of the most went from nothing to something, was What If Jane Foster was Thor. So with the new Thor Love and Thunder coming out and her reprising her role as Jane Foster and so on and so forth, they definitely it went up because What If now is basically coming to life. So technically, if you think about in the chronological order of comic books, the first appearance of Jane Foster as Thor is not when Jane Foster became Thor in 2015. It was back in the 70s and 80s when it was the What If comic book. And so I think the What If things are awesome because it's a fake universe. Yes.
Well, it's fake.
And what I think is brilliant, like you just said, is that What If kind of goofiness that was so fun, they're playing with that now, not only in What If, but in like what is real, and those were fun. And I think we're seeing a shift in the Marvel back into that. We're going to have a little phase that's just goofy and fun. Like I was looking through those comics, and one that, again, it wasn't worth much, but it had gone up, was a Marvel team up between Aunt May and Galactus.
Yes.
And like ridiculous stuff that was like 80s. But like, that's fun. Like,
and these are things you have to do. You can't do What Ifs full feature films.
No,
you can't do What Ifs.
And What Ifs animated,
series,
right?
Yes,
yeah,
you have to.
Yeah.
So they did one of the cool things I will say that Marvel and Disney Plus, again, one of the bonuses of Disney Plus is they got all the main actors to play themselves,
which is awesome.
So like
Yeah.
the voice acting, when you're watching the animated
Yep.
Black Panther, rest in peace, it is Chadwick Boseman, which is pretty cool. It is, I can't think of anybody else's name. It's Tony Stark playing
Right.
Iron Man. And that's, to me, okay. If you want to bring Iron Man back, bring him in an animated role and have Tony Stark be played by Robert Downey Jr., I'm okay with that.
Yep.
Iron Man's done in the big picture, I believe. They might do Iron Heart, which is the female Iron Man, and so on, or the female version of Iron Man. But yeah, animated to me is cool. I really wish it's hard for them to do the Spider-Man like Into the Spider-Verse version.
Yep.
I do wish this What If was that style.
Yeah.
But I mean, what did they take 5 years to make that movie? So it's like
that kind of stuff. That's right. That's the fun stuff though that I want to see in Star. Like I just thinking like it wouldn't be What If, but they could do an animated series of the legacy stories.
Yes.
Right. And for my generation, like I would eat that up. If you did Timothy Zahn trilogy as just a Legends, I would lose my mind, Disney. If you
What if they did a What If and it was Luke Skywalker became the prince, Luke Skywalker, and Princess Leia actually was the Jedi.
Or like what if this Star Wars universe coexisted with the Marvel universe?
Galactus versus Darth Vader.
I don't even somebody, yeah. The Death Star versus Galactus. Planet Eater versus Planet Destroyer.
C-3PO versus Iron Man.
Yeah.
But I mean, it does have that ability. Again, the miniseries has an ability to try something.
Exactly.
And they still spend, that's the thing, is they still spend millions of dollars on these shows. They're made, when you're watching Loki and an explosion happens in Loki, it looks like an explosion that would happen on Loki, a movie, which is awesome.
Yep.
And they have that, but the technology's gotten better. And with this, good segue is, there was this show, that happened also. It's called Star Wars Gallery. Yep. That was the behind the scenes of the Mandalorian. Yes. They were showing how they filmed in this one room, that the screen was actually projected, that what they filmed behind it wasn't full on CGI. There was editing to it, but in the back of it, the Mandalorian was walking, and he could see behind him, not a green screen. Behind him was actual something he's walking to. And it made them be able to act better.
Yep.
It made the actual visualization better. And then they can touch it in post and fix it and make it the way they want it to. But it's like the new technology in it allows them to make movies and TV shows a lot better. I mean, they used something similar on Jungle Book, the Jon Favreau again.
Right.
There's not one scene in that movie that was filmed in the actual jungle.
Yeah.
It was all filmed on a soundstage, and they made it look like they were actually in the jungle and not fake in the jungle. It looked like they were in the jungle.
Right. Well, it was like you said about, how now we kind of, some of these franchises, like, do you really need the big full feature length theater releases? Because what's crazy, I just was thinking about it when you said it, what we just saw, let's say in Loki, is better than any movie that came out, 5 years ago?
Yes. Oh, it's the same movie we were just talking about with laptops.
I mean, how far are we from just plugging into this and just like, it's going to be, I'm going to have a Disney chip in my head and I will get it. I will get the Disney chip.
And you won't be, because there'll be people out there like, I'm not doing that, because they have it available on a regular movie. Because I read books only. I won't read them on my iPad. Got to have the feeling and the smelling of it. So there's still the people that are going to be old school who want that. And speaking of that old school, so we were talking about the we don't need to, but we're looking like, hey, what can we do? Can we trim the budget down?
Right.
And so we have a list of what we pay, and obviously Hulu. So I have the package, Hulu and Disney Plus together, and then you also get ESPN Plus too, and you saw that stuff too. And so we're like looking at it, and I'm like, I skipped over Disney Plus, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, I can't at this point in my life, I can't. That sounds so stupid. First world problem. I can't live without it.
Yep.
Like they're making me spend $8 a month, whatever it is, plus the Hulu cost, or whatever, to buy a service that I may use. Like there's a possibility that during this pandemic, I didn't look at it once. I didn't even turn the app on, and I spent $8 on it.
Yeah. No, I mean, but
there's definitely times where, I mean, when you do, if there's 4 Marvel movies a year, you're getting me to go to the theater 4 times.
Right.
Out of 12 months.
Yes.
If there's not something on every month, you got me to go to start your theater, Disney Plus 12 times a year.
And I love my theater at home.
Yes, exactly. And that's what, so one of the things that's cool that's coming out is like, so Black Widow, as this episode's come out, Black Panther came out Friday when this episode came out, that Black Widow, I should say, obviously was delayed and so on and so forth. And they weren't going to do a co-release on Disney Plus and in the theaters, but they opted for this one to do that. So now we're going to be able to watch for $30, but what's it cost to go to the movies nowadays? $25 to $30?
It's been so long, honestly. It's a lot.
Well, if we pop popcorn, right?
Right.
And open a soda, just as an example, and pay the $30 for the movies, it's still going to be cheaper than me going to the theater and buying soda and popcorn.
Oh,
and
without a
and I
doubt.
have to go at a certain time, and I can't possibly go to the bathroom, and all those other things. So $30,
Yeah.
$29 for me for buying on Disney Plus if we were to do that is still worth it to me. And so I love that idea. I don't think they'll ever go fully to that. I don't think it will be.
No.
So that's what will happen for Black Widow, or is happening for Black Widow, I should say currently. The next movie that comes out is Shang-Chi and the 10 Rings, the Resurrection of 10 Rings. That comes out on September 3rd. They're waiting 45 days. Then it'll be on Disney Plus for $29.99.
Exactly.
For like probably a month or so, and then it will be free on Disney Plus.
Exactly.
Or I don't even know. They don't say online that it actually is going to be charging after 45 days. It could be go to the theater and see it for 45 days. After 45 days, it's free on Disney Plus. I don't know.
Right.
But it's allowing me to go, can I wait 45 days? If I can wait 45 days, I'll just watch it at home.
Right. Or charge a premium price that says, look, if you really can't wait and you're a Disney Plus subscriber, $30,
yes,
you can watch it. Yeah, that's a lot of money, but it's a privilege you have if you want to pay for it.
And I think that's what HBO, and they're doing it movie by movie. So Shang-Chi and the Legend of the 10 Rings, they said in the theaters on September 3rd, and I estimated it out to be the week of October 18th, Disney Plus.
Yep.
You'll be able to see it on Disney Plus. They have not even announced. So Eternals comes out November 5th.
Yeah.
They haven't said whether or not it's gonna be the 45 days at the same time. Whereas HBO and Paramount and all those, they got together and were like, every movie in 2021 and 2022 is gonna be on TV show and on the big screen and on HBO Max. And so they just came out and said it, which pissed AMC off and Cinemark and all those people off. At least Disney Plus was saying, let's give 45 days. And I'm like, that's cool to me too. I just don't like the idea when you see a movie comes out July 9th, and then you can't see it in your house until December.
Right.
That sucks.
And like I said, I know there's people like me, I'm sure, that I like watching movies at home. When, say, the next big culmination Marvel movie comes out of the next rotation, I'm not going to go see it in the theater. If you release it on the same day, I will pay $50 to watch it that day.
Correct.
So I can watch it at home. Happy to. Yep. Because I understand that, like, I'm asking for.
I have to be around all those people. I don't have to wait. Like I said, the biggest thing to me is, at 35 years old, I drink a lot of liquids. I have to use the bathroom quite often, and I don't want to miss that thing. And so that's one of the benefits with, this episode also comes out after we talked to Josh Bolton from Queen City Cinema Club, and one of the benefits of his place is that you get that ability to go in there and watch a movie and you press pause and go take a leak and then come back or go get another drink and come back.
It's the future, man.
Press a button, he'll bring you a beer or a drink in your seat. That's what the future should be like. And
I think it gets back. It's clearly, if you listen to us, we talk about this kind of theme all the time of, like, whatever. We're all nostalgic for things.
Correct.
I mean, I have a master's degree in history. I clearly have a problem with the past, right? So I get all of that, but I'm like, what we always talk about, like, movies in the theater, man, my God, I have amazing memories of that.
Yes.
You know what I want? The same experience in my living room on the sofa with my food where I can pause it.
And then you get one of these candles. This smells like movie theater. This is just tobacco.
Yes,
exactly.
It
smells like old popcorn.
It smells like buttered popcorn and chewing gum and
sweat.
Yeah, sweat and child hormones and all kinds of grossness and teen spirit.
Light that in the corner, let it smell. You smell like a movie theater and you're good. But my talk, and I had this conversation when my dad was up, is it won't ever go away.
No.
The problem is that people like AMC get pissed off because they're a company that's made money off of people for years, who've charged way too much more money for a bag of popcorn. I mean, the movie cost to me has never been a problem. The cost of going to see a movie for $10, $12, you see $10, $12 to see a local band play. Yeah. What's the difference? Like, I don't understand that. Like, cover charge is $10 to go somewhere.
It's going to go away. Like, I mean, to me, like, that's how these markets work, right? Like, it won't go away. Yes, you're going to have to pay more to see it in person, because that's not what everybody does yet, but you can still do it. Yeah. It's just a luxury experience now.
And if it changes for me going to see, because I say AMC, I've gone to the theater, maybe I moved back to Bangor in 2016, maybe 5 times. I mean, I went and saw Infinity War. I went and saw some of the movies before Disney Plus, in the theater. But prior to that, I used to go to places in Massachusetts called AMC theaters. And we know AMC too, because we'll do an episode on stocks and things like that at some point too. But like, the AMC had this whole thing. But AMC theaters will get pissed off and they're like, oh, well, people won't come to the theaters. And I'm like, well, you know what's funny about it is Marvel Disney are making changes to make them more money, and they're working with the times, right? They're changing, and they did this whole, release Black Widow in theaters, release it at home for $30, and you have to have a subscription too. So it's actually technically like $40 because you have to
Well,
subscribe
exactly.
and get
Yep.
it. But they're changing with the times to make it so that they can get more
Yes.
money, make it easier for you, make the experience better. But AMC's over here going like, no, you can't do that. It's
But
like,
we've
well,
always done it this way.
why don't you
Yeah.
change? So
Yep.
now you
Exactly.
make the experience better. So here's the deal. If theaters are no longer just theaters and they're 4D.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't even care if it's 3D with the glasses, but 4D with
Give
it's like
me
you
a
sit,
different experience.
exactly, where I can't have at home.
Yep.
So if I sit there and a fire is breaking out on the screen and it gets a little bit warmer in there and it smells like burnt plastic,
I will be there the next day.
Correct. That to me, when you have an immersive experience into it, that changes the entire game.
Add some augmented reality things to it in ways.
Your seat vibrates a little bit when you're on a train, or
somehow you can see something on your phone.
Correct.
You can't that interactive I'm there the next day and I will pay double whatever you're charging right now.
Yes. Or private theaters, like Josh's idea of you can't see brand new movies, but you can see if you bring your own DVD or stuff like that, you can see that. So you have that private experience, but big theaters could do that too. It's like, instead of $10 a ticket, it's, 10 seats, it's $100.
Yes.
You get the whole theater to yourself. It's because it's all digital now. It's not even real. Sometimes
no, it's not.
You just pause it. You can turn the volume up. You can fast forward. You can watch the screens over again. Those are the kind of experiences I think, okay, now I'll go to the theater to see that.
Sure. But we said, even though if I want to watch it at home, charge me $100. I get it, because what you're thinking is I'm going to invite 10 friends over to watch it. I probably am. So that's fair. But if I don't want to, guess what? I get to watch it all by myself.
Yes, exactly. No one's going,
yeah.
What happened? I went pee.
I think what you said is something would be it's like tie it back to us, with craft brewing. We've seen things move to this smaller scale. Why not come up with a new thing in between that is you rent a theater room with your friends and they have a lease with Disney that how that works out. You pay, but again, I'd be back into a brand new movie if I could say, hey, Justin, you, me, Taylor, Annie, you want to go rent for the opening night of whatever. Eternals. That sounds amazing. We can drink beer.
Correct.
We can have food.
Oh, and AMC had that. AMC wasn't AMC. It was Movie Pass. Was it Movie Pass? It's like 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, I remember.
If the marketing and the campaign and the structure behind that was better, again, different experience where I can pay. It has to be more than what I was. It was like $25 a month that I could go see as many movies as I wanted a month, which is ridiculous. It would have to be something along the lines where it's like $50, $60, $70 a month. Right. You'd have to be able to pay that much and go see as many movies as you want. And what I also said that was a problem with it was they should have opted to do discounts on concessions as well if you had that pass, because these companies are a $10 popcorn. This company's making $8 on. So even if you did $6 for the popcorn, you're still going to make $4 off that popcorn that I wasn't going to buy unless I had this thing. So part of me goes, you're going to get something off of me or you're going to get nothing off of me.
Exactly.
And so there's some structures on that, but I think the 4D aspect of it, or that I hate to say 4D, but the immersive, because I hate 3D. I could give two craps about 3D. So if the screen was flat and there was nothing jumping out at me, but I could smell burnt things. If you're on a train, the seat vibrates a little bit. And
have you in Illinois, where we were just visiting, a couple of their local theaters have those, I forget what they're called, Dynamax or something, where the seats move and like you said, and that's cool, but they're not making the movies for that. No. I mean, they're programming the seat to work, but from the ground up, Disney led immersive experience would be,
and they have them in New York City and California or Los Angeles, and I think those two are only specific movies go to those things because they are made from the studio to them. But there are other ones like you were mentioning that are just like some companies like watching the movie and going, okay, yep, and so they created it from the beginning. That's what would make me go to the theaters. Exactly. But until then, streaming it online, it doesn't do the same day. It could be Black Widow comes out on the 9th, and that weekend you have to go to theaters, and the following Friday night it's on Disney Plus.
Exactly.
And that way we all have to wait a week. And if I cannot wait, and I don't want to spoil it for me, and I gotta go see it, then I can go see it in the theaters the week prior, or sometimes during the week prior. The 45 days is quite a long time to me, because to me it's like Shang-Chi is probably one of those movies. Again, I love every Marvel movie, but some of these the Kung Fu movies, it's probably gonna be one of the ones I'm gonna be able to wait the 45 days.
Right.
Eternals. That would be the question I have. Eternals, I'm really looking forward to. So if it's possible that I will go see it in the theaters, but we'll see about that. But in the meantime, between all these 4 movies coming out, we've got What If coming out this summer. Exactly. It's animated. New Hawkeye one, which it's pretty bitch guaranteed that Kate Bishop, who is one of the young Avengers, becomes Hawkeye. Basically takes over for Clint Barton. That's the whole storyline on that. And I think that's a lot of the transitions that happen now from phase the Infinity
Which is
Saga over to the new saga,
also,
which
it's
is
brilliant.
yes.
Stop for a minute to like have different people take up the mantle
Of the other
season
person.
to season. Like,
And there's certain ones because there's certain ones that obviously make sense that the Hulk, it's a little harder, even though there are in the comic books. If anybody reads them, different characters who have played Hulk. There's She-Hulk. There's Amadeus Cho becomes Hulk. There's the Immortal Hulk now.
Yep.
So there's are variations of it, but it's a little bit easier for someone like Hawkeye, who's just really good at shooting arrows.
Yes.
Iron Man, who just has a suit of armor. So
exactly.
So some of these characters definitely can have that. Okay, the next person's just wearing the suit.
Yeah, which makes it fun. I mean,
yes. And so that's cool about Hawkeye is, I mean, there's the transition to the next person, and they'll do their Miss Marvel is coming out. So that's the first woman of color or race, young kid. It's gonna be really good. I don't know if everybody knows the Miss Marvel story. It's pretty good.
Miss Marvel,
and that's she's technically an Inhuman, so that's the whole Inhuman thing. Moon Knight's coming out sometime in 2022. She-Hulk's actually gonna be a comedy supposedly, which is pretty good.
I heard that,
and so that would be kind of fun. Bruce Banner or what's his name, Mark Ruffalo is supposedly making an appearance in it. That's a weird one because Hulk character itself and Hulk pictures are still owned by Universal.
Yeah.
And so there's that one where they can't make a Hulk movie, and that's why Thor Ragnarok was basically Planet Hulk. Planet Hulk, but they couldn't make it called Planet Hulk. So that was pretty cool. Armor Wars is again a bunch of War Machine, Iron Man. That one I think to me might have a little bit of Tony Stark in it somehow, as well as Iron Heart, which is the younger female version of Iron Man.
That's what I was going to ask you. I was like, I don't actually know what Ironheart is.
Yeah, Ironheart is basically, guys, she's a female Iron Man, basically.
Gotcha.
In the sense, she's a younger. Again, a lot of these things, which is pretty cool, because again, getting the younger generation in it. Exactly. Is the Young Avengers, and if they did a Young Avengers movie, I'd be down on it because there's a bunch of cool people in there. Sam Alexander plays Nova as a Young Avenger, so that would be obviously that'd be pretty cool for me. But what I want them to do is not do it for another 10 years or 8 years, 9 years, that we can go see the years of my son. And then Secret Invasion, which was one of my favorite comic book story arcs of all time. Secret Invasion is gonna be really cool too. Again, it has those scrolls and in the comic books, like Wolverine is not Wolverine. It's actually a scroll playing Wolverine to try to infiltrate the United States and the world and so on and so forth. That'll be fun. Those are all the upcoming Marvel ones. And then in development was I Am Groot, which to me is in the comic book they did eventually make Groot actually speak.
Yes.
I really want this series to just be Groot as the main character, him just say I am Groot all the time.
All the time.
Like, there's no
which
you're like
done well because it would require a brilliant straight person to play the non-funny guy that pairs with the guy that just says I am Groot all the time.
That would be awesome. And then there's an Echo series. I'm not a big Echo person. I've never read Okoye. She was in the Black Panther movies, and then a Wakanda series coming up too. Those are all the series that are coming out for Marvel. And then there's a few Star Wars ones we talked about too. I mean, there's I don't know if you want to read a couple of them.
Oh yeah.
Right here.
Yep. Oh, gotcha. Sorry, I'm getting old.
No, you're good.
Yeah, man, there's so much. I think most of us, it's a good one to start out with. We have Book of Boba Fett coming up.
And so we talked about the history.
Yes.
I think that's one thing they actually dropped off of and didn't stow enough of us talking about Boba Fett.
Yes.
I think it's one of the things that everybody's clamored for years. People have Boba Fett tattoos, and he's really a very insignificant, small character.
Yeah, if we go back to the original trilogies, I mean, an afterthought, an action figure.
Yes.
But that's where I'm starting to see, though, Star Wars being smart in saying, instead of going back and forth, just do it. Do Boba Fett. People have been asking you to do Boba Fett forever. There's no right way to do it. Just do it. So I don't know what you thought. I thought they did a good job with Boba Fett and Mandalorian. They could have really overdone it and made it really heavy-handed, but it made sense. It was just a part of the story. So that I think is going to be fun.
Yes.
But I know some people aren't, because it wasn't what they thought Boba Fett would be. It's that classic iconic character. Well, that's not Boba Fett,
I hate that.
It drives me up the wall. It's like when people are like, "Oh man, that's not what that band sounds like."
Well, it's a Solo movie all over again. Oh, that's not Harrison Ford. Yeah, because Harrison Ford's in his 70s.
Exactly.
What would you want him to do?
Yes.
Oh, you want a Harrison Ford? You want a movie about Han Solo with Harrison Ford in it?
Playing a young version of himself.
That's not remember Wet Hot American Summer that was on Netflix?
Yes.
They did it. It was 10 years later, 20 years later, where they played it, made it sound like it was the next year. And it was all these people that were our age. That is funny. They can't do that with Han Solo.
No, it's like when they tried to do the ending to the Harry Potter movies, and it so clearly was everybody in kind of okay makeup.
Yes.
So yeah, Book of Boba Fett, I'm excited about. like
Andor?
I said, we have Andor on there.
Yeah.
Andor is a spinoff of Rogue One.
Yeah.
So that I really liked Rogue One. So I
Mhm.
think going back and exploring that's going to be fun. And of course, there's Rogue Squadron in the works coming
Yes,
up as a
yes,
movie.
yes.
And a lot of Star Wars nerd fans will remember the Rogue Squadron novel series. And from what I understand, they did kind of use that as a basis, which is the brilliance of
We
their
should, yeah.
how they said like none of this is canon anymore, but we can use it as canon if we
Yes,
want to.
exactly.
So that's fun. Like it'll be good to see that storyline continued. Now on to the one I already mentioned,
Yeah,
Obi-Wan
Obi-Wan
Kenobi,
Kenobi,
which
yeah.
makes me want to giggle. I
Yes.
get so excited.
But they did also bring back original characters too, because it's going to
Yeah.
be Hayden Christensen. It's
Oh,
going to be,
and it's going to be,
what's his name?
you know, I think a thing that's Ewan McGregor.
Yes, Ewan McGregor.
That's going to be interesting with the just totally lost my with the Obi-Wan Kenobi movies. I forget, but is that I think for a lot of people coming to Star Wars now, they don't realize like there's the prequels, right?
Yes.
Which for me, they came along right when I was like getting out of high school, going to college. And it was amazing that Star Wars was back. I was obsessed. I loved it. I got older. They weren't my favorite anymore, but they had a special place in my heart. But I think what most people forget, and you mentioned earlier, so just any of our listeners, is there was this huge bridge where Star Wars Clone Wars, the animated series, tried to make sense of everything that had happened in the prequels. But the problem is we're like, there's a generation gap there because my generation didn't watch Clone Wars that much, but they're leaning heavy on it in the new universe, which I think is brilliant. It's modern. It's what the younger generation knows. Everybody I hear that's like, why are they doing so much with the prequel movies? And I'm like, because the entire emerging market for Star Wars grew up with those. So in that, I think that's where it gets really fun to like Obi-Wan Kenobi, Ahsoka, those movies that like, right. I think once people get a sense of those stories, they'll really like them. But I think for a lot of people, for instance, Ahsoka, people had no clue, which you didn't need to.
No.
But what a massive character she is.
Yes. And but also for the same thing that happened with Mandalorian. Like to me, the Mandalorian really was a new Star Wars. And it was mentioned that it was there. It was on the peripheral. But now it's one of my favorite things that ever happened with Star Wars is Mandalorian. So with these movies, with Andor, with the Ahsoka, those movies to me are going to be like, they're going to be the peripheral characters to me. But now it makes me go, oh, it has the Star Wars logo on it. It's the Bad Batch thing. It's the Clone Wars. It has the Star Wars logo on it.
And it's starting to have that thing we talked about with Marvel too, where it's like, it's going to, yes, you have to learn who Ahsoka is, but like, that's a great storyline. It's going to bring in Admiral Thrawn, which does two things. If you don't know him from the novels, you know him from Clone Wars. And if you don't know him from Clone Wars, you grew up with him in the Timothy Zahn trilogy. So people are going to watch that just for that whole Admiral Thrawn storyline. And Ahsoka, I think, is going to be great based on her character in the show. So that one I'm super excited about. Lando, it sounds like it's still in production, but there's like nothing about it except that Donald Glover is going to be in it. And that's about it.
Which I liked. I liked Donald Glover. The same thing we watched Saturday night at OBC late. I put on Venom.
Yes.
And a lot of people complained to me, people that Marvel comic book fans and all that stuff, that Venom wasn't good and all that stuff. I was like, I could see some plot holes. I see some problems with it. I thought it was overall a good movie. Again, Sony Picture, not an MCU movie, really.
Right.
But I think it was good. I can't wait to Let There Be Carnage coming out too. I can't wait for that. But the same thing with Han Solo movie, the Solo movie. People like, oh, this, that, and the other thing is horrible. Overall, if you watch the movie and you have a standalone, you don't think about the fact that the lineage of the history of Star Wars. It was an excellent movie. And it's the people look back on it and they go, well, this is wrong. And this character should have been Harrison Ford. And if you do all that, then you can pick apart any movie.
Han's or Solo.
Yes.
Like, honestly, might have been the best movie of the new run of movies.
I'm going to say second, Rogue One. But those two movies to me are of the movies that came out after the first three.
And I was like, that was Star Wars.
Yes. Well, it's like I said, the Rogue One, the one movie before, because it came out before Solo, that doesn't have the word wars in it, had the most war in it.
Yes.
To me, it was the funniest thing. And so Solo, again, a Star Wars movie.
Yep.
But it was excellent. I think Donald Glover was excellent.
That is one I will die on that hill. Anybody that I'm like, if you're just fanboy mad because it wasn't Harrison Ford and you don't see that's what the movie should be.
Yes.
Then Like,
Because I mean, Han Solo was one of the greatest characters
like,
in that original
exactly.
movie, and now you get to hear his background story.
Yeah.
Why
Well,
wouldn't you want
here's,
that?
I mean, as we're talking, here's a good moment where you said we both have these backgrounds with these franchises. Like, I'll do my full disclosure on where I stand with Star Wars, which is love the originals, love the prequels out of nostalgia. I'm kind of no comment on the new ones at the moment. Like,
what I will say with the new ones, and just to piggyback on that, is there are people out there that are Star Wars fans because of them.
yes.
And
that's
what
people
matters.
forget.
That's what matters.
Yes.
They, first of all, they made all of the money.
Yes.
That's what matters for Disney or Lucasfilms, just because that's the point.
That's also that thing you talked about of that not
trying
new things is like, I get it. You think I'm talking to like Gen Xers, which, you know, because actually I was pretty young when Star Wars came out. Like, Star Wars isn't actually yours.
No.
So like, not everybody wants it to be what it was then.
Correct.
And so mine is like, yes. Does the new one speak to me? No. Guess what? Not supposed to.
Yes. Well, that's the thing when you watch the Star Wars movies. You have all the different ways of ordering. Like, you watch them, the original 3, then the next 3, We watch them in chronological order and all that stuff. And a lot of people who are younger are going to watch the original 3 and go, I can't watch these. These graphics suck. Like, and what they were was freaking riveting back in the 70s. It was unbelievable graphics. Well, nowadays, it's not the greatest. And then you think about if you do it in the scale between the original 3 and the second 3.
Yes.
The second 3 had too much.
Which, and I think still is interesting if we go back, they were mind-blowing.
Yes.
In the theater in the moment.
Yes.
They don't live up to it now, but nothing does.
And then they had to go backwards because of all the fandom. And they had to go back and go, we had to do some of the older way of shooting the movie. And I'm like, okay, but what they should have done, and they did some of it is with Colin Trevorrow, is the mixture of the two.
Yes.
That I think is great. There's some older blaster shots kind of thing.
Yeah.
But some of the robots and the androids and stuff like that, the droids need to be CGI. That's cool with me.
And that in doing it right is fun. I mean, that's like, the little pit droids from the prequels that are in the new Mandalorian. They still look kind of not right.
Yes.
But that's great. That's a continuity. It's fine. It's fiction. I'm okay.
I did
with
love
that.
my biggest thing about Star Wars original movies, and I want to go all into like the whole trilogy, but is that there was robots and droids in the second 3 movies that technically were the prequels that were way more advanced than the ones that were in the original 3 movies. Yes. That you don't see in the original 3. That was one of my biggest plot holes to me, that they created droids in the prequels that weren't in the second 3.
Like a Dark Ages in the Star Wars universe.
There's definitely there's things that happened in the movies that were supposed to be the prequels that weren't in the original movies.
Well, like then you get to Mandalorian and it's like, oh my God, it's like it's this wasteland.
Correct.
And I mean, but yeah, you're right. It's like the prequels are like this, the height of human society, and all that's gone.
So I'm like, well, where did happen to all these cool droids that were running around? Now you have a trash can that has wheels on it
in the desert. Yeah, that's fixing moisture farming equipment. Yeah,
it was one of those weirdest things. I'm like, they didn't think about this. They just didn't think through it. I don't think. Again, this is early 2000s. We're now 20 something years ago that they came up with the episode 1 came out. Was it 99, 2000, somewhere around there. So they don't think like they do now. There is no Kevin Feige. There was. Kathleen Kennedy technically is the person who did that for Marvel, for our Star Wars. But they didn't do what they do now. They have like things where they have meetings and there's rules to things. When Loki, time travel, they said there technically wasn't any rules for time travel until Endgame.
Right.
Now they created rules of time travel. Now there's a book at Marvel that says this is what time travel is.
How it works.
Because someone out there is going to go, that's not what it was like in Endgame.
Yes.
And so now they have these things. So when Loki was doing time travel on the Loki show, they have to abide by the rules that were created in Endgame. And those are the kind of things I don't think happened back in the day with Star Wars. They don't happen in DC. They don't happen in other things. There's no continuity there's no new continuity. There's continuity to books like DC. This person was this person in the comic books. They have to be this person in the TV show or the movie. But there's no continuity to the current universe you're in.
And I think that's an interesting point that you bring up, the difference with comics versus, George Lucas writing a thing, is that, I mean, God, the original Star Wars movies, like Star Wars is made and they haven't written Empire yet. Kind of, maybe, but they want to see how the toy sales go and if they need to tweak it. So like, this is not the same thing as in the same period. Comic books even had some kind of boundaries that kept the story going. Star Wars, like you said, by the third one, it clearly has shifted into let's sell Ewok stuffed toys, And I know that's a big dividing point for some people.
I
The
have the
Ewoks are
Ewok animated movie.
The Ewoks are great. I loved them as a kid. They're stupid. I will not hear any other arguments. That was as ridiculous as Jar Jar Binks. I will accept no other argument on that.
So is Jar Jar? Why does Jar Jar Binks have a TV show? Why don't they give him a reboot?
See, but if they were doing like Marvel, he could be the most hilarious comedy character ever in Marvel.
How about here we go, crossover.
Yes.
Got it. Jar Jar Binks and Groot do a TV show together and they take off in the universe.
I mean, Jar Jar steps through some portal and ends up in the Marvel universe. And that's it. The only Star Wars character that ever crosses over to Marvel is Jar Jar Binks.
He's part of the Guardians of the Galaxy now. So it's Groot, Rocket Raccoon.
That would be incredible. And if that happens, we get
or they could do Other Guys.
Line.
Remember the movie Other Guys with Mark Wahlberg?
Yes.
And they were supposed to have the Rock and someone else was supposed to be in it. In the first 30 seconds of the movie, they jump off the building to try to save someone and they die. And it's like this whole thing that was like they set you up, and at the very beginning of the movie they killed them off. That's the same thing would happen. I mean, it'd be amazing is that he gets through a portal somehow. Jar Jar Binks ends up in the Marvel universe, and then Galactus kills him.
That would be
immediately done.
And for the briefest moment, he becomes the Herald of Galactus for like 2 minutes, and he dies. Yeah, but for just in canon for 2 minutes, Jar Jar Binks is the Herald of Galactus.
I'm loving it. I think it's great. I think we need to now do this. I think we need toys. And that is also the opposite. Back in the days, speaking of toys drove the movies and TV shows. Now movie shows and TV shows drive the toys and comic books. Honestly, even though comic books is the base material that they make some of these movies off of. There was not a Fantastic Four comic book for years,
right?
Because Marvel didn't own the rights to the movie.
Yeah,
exactly. And so they stopped making the comic books. Yep. And so now that they have the rights to the movies back again, there's like 34 issues of the Fantastic Four out. They're setting themselves up again, so on and so forth. That's the crazy part about that, that the movies now drive everything else, including my passion, which is comic books.
Yes,
they're driven now by movies, and which is insane. Yep. So like the Eternals hadn't had an Eternals comic book since 2006-ish, which is a really good series that came out in 2006-ish, which is basically the movie. So the Eternals came out back in the 70s and 80s, but the movie itself, the new movie, is basically based off of the 2006 version of it too, with a mixture of the original one. But they have Eternals now. You can buy Eternals every month now at the comic book shop. That's awesome. But they hadn't done one in a while. Because the movie was coming out, they're like, oh, we got to have something out there. But I put the Eternals out there. And it's the exact same thing that Black Widow has her own series because of the movie, not because of the opposite. It's not because the movie... the comic book is because of the movie, it's the opposite. And I do like that Marvel's also taken the liberty and said, no, MCU is one thing. We can take base material off of the comic books. But guess what? It does not. Loki has zero to do with any structured comic book to go with it. There's some parts they pull from things, but you cannot go, oh, I don't know anything about this Loki show. Let me just find this in the comic book. It's not there. And they made their own universe, and I love that because that makes it so much better.
Honestly, I think that's the nail on the head. The reason they were successful with Marvel is they said this is not the same thing anymore. Correct. And Star Wars is still struggling with it's kind of the same thing. It's kind of the same thing. Yes. I mean, Rey even took Skywalker as a last name, which again was one of the ones where I was like, we get it, guys. We get it.
Skywalker. Oh, it's because he has Skywalker Ranch because it's all those different things. That's why he did it.
It's all the branding and marketing. It had to be that
way, but we can't get rid of the name now. But Miss Marvel. It's only Marvel because Marvel is the company. Yeah. We got to give Marvel this, Marvel that. The new Captain Marvel movie is going to be called The Marvels. There you go. It's all because of the branding.
It's all because of the branding.
But to wrap everything up into one little tiny bow or big bow and say that Disney, the people at Disney, the people at Marvel and Lucasfilms have come together and been able to do something that no one else has been able to do. And we're talking about Netflix, which is basically that the older people in the world who say they want to stream something, they talk about Netflix. They don't talk about, almost like Googling.
Oh yeah.
Hey, what movie? Is it on Netflix? Netflix doesn't have all the movies anymore.
No.
And that's one of those weird things that people do. So it's the Googling thing. It's the Kleenex thing. It's the Band-Aid thing. Something got the name for streaming, and Netflix is the pioneer of that, so they got the name for streaming. Because of that, though, we've been able to watch some of these shows and things and gotten deep into characters that, like I've said, I've done reviews, even blogs, or done a podcast saying, "Don't ever stop making Marvel things," because I will watch every one of them. Yeah. They made $2 billion off of Endgame, but guess what? They'd be happy at $900 to $1 billion, $900 million to $1 billion. So even if they lose money, like not lose money, but they start going down and making less money per movie or make less money per TV show, whatever it is, don't stop making them
No.
until you're absolutely losing money, or Kevin Feige retires or dies, or
Right.
and there's some structural things where like, okay, the last 3 Marvel movies have just been complete misses. Then obviously rethink
Yeah.
something. But to me, it's like if you continue making movies or TV shows that spark interest in new people watching it or myself watching it, continue doing it, because they've done an
Amazing.
unbelievable job, and they've saved me again to Star Wars. I think,
and that's to think like all of these different universes, but today why we specifically talked about Disney Plus. My thing is like for everybody that's like all grumpy but they didn't get exactly what they wanted, but like for our generation that you grew up, well, we both did, with like being fans of Marvel and Star Wars, like this is all you talked about as a kid. Wouldn't it be so cool if we had a show for every character and they all came together and like we all had these cool little Easter eggs and we all had to, and now we have it and everybody's like, bleh. Except they're not, they love it, but there are people, it's like,
people are trying to be cool because it's like,
that's not the actual original costume that nobody cares, man. They're in new territory. Correct. Nobody cares. This is amazing. This is what 8-year-old you would have killed somebody for, and you have it. So shut up.
And my favorite thing is that people who are writing these and doing this are the 8-year-old.
That's the only way to do it.
They're living through, and Kevin Feige is, the story behind him too. If anybody goes on, there's a book. I forget what book it is. It's either some Stan Lee book. It might have been the Stan Lee, the newer one that came out that basically said that it was like a behind the scenes things about Stan Lee's family or whatever. That I was in the middle of it and we had the baby, but was that Kevin Feige was a like PA somewhere for someone, and he just happened to know about comic books and X-Men movies, I believe it was the original X-Men movies, and he just ended up moving on to the person who was like the end all be all decision maker for anything that comes out Marvel on screen. Kevin Feige's name is attached to it, and he has he's not going anywhere. No. He's not being courted by, he's probably being courted by other people, but he's not going anywhere. There's no way.
Why would you?
You paid $4 billion for Marvel at Disney.
Would you imagine, like, well, for you, such a Marvel, if somebody was like, okay, here's the keys, you're in charge of all of it.
Everything.
Like,
and the thing is, he knows it.
Yeah.
That's not knows like he's in charge of everything, but he knows the
how
material.
Cool he knows how cool it is.
He knows the source material because he is a comic book fan.
Yes.
He's not, in Taika Waititi, Loki, Tom Hiddleston is a fan of comic books. He reads them all. He knows the people. That's what I care about the most.
I
people
agree.
watch, Christian Bale, I don't think was a big Batman fan when he became Batman.
Well, even, not gonna go on a tangent, but I can't remember his name, the show The Witcher that was on Netflix. What a weird niche show, but he played the game and you could tell.
Because you lived it. You wanted to be that person. Same thing here. If you give me, what's your dream job? Not to act in a Marvel movie, not to write one, not to direct one, to just be in charge of like being like, we should do this. We should and be around a table, you and I around a table going, what about this obscure series that came out? We could do a short series, 3-part episodes on Disney Plus. Try it there. If it does well, we put the character into a new show. The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. If that would have bombed completely, they would have just ended the Falcon and Winter Soldier's characters in the movies. Right. Did pretty well. So now you might see Falcon show up in a movie and Winter Soldier show up in a movie.
Exactly.
Here. WandaVision. Now they're like, okay, how do we get this to be something else? Loki supposedly is going to have a second season, which is pretty cool, which also makes me think, I was talking to Taylor about this yesterday, is at the end of WandaVision, we had a culmination of something. At the end of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, there was kind of a culmination of something where like he became Captain America and so on. This is going to have an ending culmination of something because they can't just leave it a cliffhanger. But there's going to be some like multiple open avenues that are going to lead to other things because it has to do with Doctor Strange and the multiverse. And they said Kevin Feige said one thing was messed up because of the pandemic, other than release dates and all that stuff.
Right.
One thing they had planned for the near 15-year future, 10-year future was messed up because of this, and they were able to redo some things. But everything else is still on plan. And I think Loki has something to do with a lot of this. And I hope, and I don't want to get too much again into it, we've been talking for a while, is I hope it has a lot to do with Secret Wars, which if anybody else there wants the multiverses go off in all these different places and they have to collide back again to create one more. And I think that if they can do this over the next 5-10 years doing this, and then 5 or 10 years from now, they have the Secret Wars movies, like they did the Avengers Endgame and Infinity War, I think it'd be absolutely amazing. Jonathan Hickman did a great job with the more recent ones. They also the ones back in the 80s and 90s, or that was Secret Wars. That was pretty cool too. And one last thing to live on, the reason it was called the Secret War, nothing to do with secret.
No,
it did have something to do with war, because they researched words that would do well with people, and the word secret and war were the top words. So they put them together and they created Secret War. And I was like, oh my God, that is like trying to sell things.
And just always have to like verify with your knowledge, and if I'm correct, Secret Wars is where we got the symbiote costume, right? So I mean,
so the original one, and
original one, but that's one I remember. I'm saying like that alone, amazing,
and that like relates to the whole thing. And that way, my whole theory in the whole thing is that sometimes the X-Men are going to be introduced. That X-Men, what we saw in X-Men for Fox was always there. In an alternate universe.
Yes.
And then they came over and they were like, okay, now we close that universe up. We tie it off with a bow and it's forgotten.
It's forgotten.
But we were able to say that it was real. That was canon.
Right.
It was there.
Which is brilliant for fans. None of that is not true. And again, you're back to, I thought that was one of the flaws in Star Wars was you didn't have to say none of this is canon anymore. We understand that what you're making is canon. Like
the Fantastic Four. And then another Fantastic Four, the Spider-Man, the other Spider-Man, and the new Spider. They all existed. None of them are real, are fake.
You don't need to close it off.
You can say, done, moving on. And that was a universe that existed somewhere else. And it was real.
Yes.
But it's part of the multiverse. And I think that would be the greatest thing I think they could have done.
It's fun.
Even if they had it, because all of a sudden I know where like Chris Evans shows back up in a movie as Johnny Storm.
Yes, exactly.
It would be freaking hilarious to me. And the person who, and then, they're like, wait, aren't you Captain America? And he's like, well, in my world, I'm Johnny Storm. And then they somehow, it's like, okay, you got to go back like on Into the Spider-Verse. You got to go back to your home multiverse. And then they never touch on it again. That somewhere else
and what
out there, Johnny Storm is played by the guy who looks like Chris Evans.
Do everyone that you can, like bring back the guy that played that horrible Captain America in the 90s. Or
Nick, what's his name?
Or Punisher.
What is his name? Is Nick Fury.
Oh gosh.
Baywatch.
Hasselhoff, David Hasselhoff. But like,
have him come back as Nick Fury.
Absolutely.
Have the Blade movies. Have Ghost Rider, Nicolas Cage.
And if you don't do that and make a joke about, weren't you a Spider-Man too? Like
you sound a lot like Spider-Man Noir.
I mean,
like,
that's brilliant. Well, like they played around with that with Thanos and like, it's there. Acknowledge it, make fun of it, and then it's not a plot hole.
And someone, I mean, Deadpool is the one I think they will do. And I wanted my whole theory about Deadpool to wrap up on Marvel thing is that Deadpool does all the cameos that Stan Lee used to do.
Oh,
so like he's like driving a school bus
that
for some
would be
reason,
funny.
or he's doing something and it's just obvious to a lot of us fans for 1 second, even in a serious movie. Deadpool happens to be in a spot that he's not supposed to be in.
Yeah.
And it's the world according to Deadpool.
That's
and that would be hilarious. And they did that actually too. Deadpool wasn't part of Secret Wars, the newer one in 2015. And he had a comic book called Deadpool Secret Wars.
That's awesome.
That would be a great series on TV.
Would be fantastic,
him inserting himself into the Secret Wars. It's basically the same comic book, but he just puts himself in the book. And there was one quick one because She-Hulk's coming out that he comes in and goes, wow, those are some nice big balloons. And she goes, excuse me? And he goes, no, the word balloons above your head. She thought he was talking about. So it's like, those are the kind of things that you could do. And I think it'd be hilarious. And that's something you can do with this stuff. Although I do think a lot of Deadpool stuff will end up on Hulu because Disney owns Hulu. And that's where the MODOK series is too, which anybody's seen. That's pretty good. So it won't end up on here unless they put Deadpool into a season show that makes him more PG-13 and more like just quick. Deadpool movies will never be on Disney Plus.
No,
it can't. They don't do R-rated movies on Disney Plus.
No, exactly.
Logan's owned by Disney now. That's on Hulu.
It's not funny if it's not R-rated. I mean,
unless you are funny about it. And I've seen the Once Upon a Deadpool where they purposely did that. But other than that, it's not good. So I definitely think there's a lot to unpack here in this episode. There's definitely a lot on Disney Plus. Subscribe to it. I mean, we're not going to get any money off of this for subscribing, but you should. Disney Plus, if you like anything to do with Star Wars, anything with Marvel, there's
National
also
Geographic,
all that stuff on there. There's also a cool show with Jeff Goldblum where he goes and does cool things around the world called World According to Jeff Goldblum. There's some cooking shows on there. There's some freaking awesome stuff on Disney Plus as a whole. Taylor and I are huge National Treasure fans, and that's owned by Disney. So Disney's going to be doing a National Treasure show. There's just some fun things on there.
They really should bring Nick Cage in some ridiculous way, just that he's in like all of these Disney Plus movies.
There's a lot of movies out there Nick Cage is in that's really good in my opinion.
I
mean, Gone in 60 Seconds, The Rock.
I love Nicolas Cage.
He's a great actor.
I just watched Con Air the other day.
Like, he's the same person in every movie, but like,
which is why it would work so well, because it's like we know that there's just Nicolas Cage. So the thing, like, you could have him pop up as a character, but everybody be like, well, you're Nicolas Cage, right? No, I'm Ghost Rider. No, you're clearly Nicolas Cage. Like,
Well, so I was trying to explain why I like the movie This Is the End so much, where it was the Seth Rogen movie.
yes, oh yeah,
Where they played themselves in the movie at the end of the world. I'm like, that is they definitely smoked a
Yes.
lot of weed and sat in a room and go,
Yep.
we should do an end of the world movie, but what if we were just ourselves? And people like Aziz Ansari is dying in a hole because the end of the world's coming up. That's hilarious. So Nicolas Cage was just in every movie like that. I would be down for it.
Just in every series, he randomly shows up, and there could be this kind of, you never acknowledge it, but like, what is up with Nicolas Cage?
And we're the opposite side of things. Not opposite side of things. We're not subscribing to Disney Plus because of I've used Lady and the Tramp or Lion King or anything like that. We watch. I mean, they'll be on like every once in a while. Like, oh, it'd be kind of cool to watch that movie. Taylor and I or my mom will be up. But there's that whole other side to it. That all the vaulted movies for Disney are on there. But the cool thing is the nostalgic part about it. We don't want the nostalgic part to be about Star Wars. Like, make some cool new stuff for Star Wars, make some cool new stuff for Marvel. But there are some cool nostalgic things that are out there, like the Mighty Ducks movie, TV show. I haven't seen it yet, but heard really good things about it.
And some real like deep vault stuff that you'll watch and you'll be like, oh my gosh, I remember watching that when I was 5 years old.
And they're redoing some of the stuff. They're adding on it. Like I said, the Mighty Ducks thing, they're adding a new show. And Emilio Estevez is in the show. And he's teaching young kids again how to play hockey. And it's like, that's fascinating. They're doing a Darkwing Duck thing. They're doing yes. There was another one. I just saw recently too. There was another one they were doing.
Well, there's that.
Oh, Sandlot.
Yeah. Sandlot. Well, I mean, they could go back and do, like you said, DuckTales. They could like do Tailspin. They could do Darkwing Duck. They could do Chippendales Rescue Rangers. Like, my gosh.
So all that stuff, and there's a lot of that stuff that's like the older movies are on there, but also like they're talking about rebooting them and coming up with new versions of it. And that to me would get me as a 35-year-old man be like, oh my God, I can't believe how amazing this is. So that's the cool thing about it too. And because they own their own streaming service and they're making these things, the behind the scenes things is really cool. So Marvel, or the Star Wars Gallery, where they talked about Mandalorian, Marvel's Assembled, which is pretty cool. So after every one of their series, they have one episode. It's about 45 minutes, an hour long. They talk behind the scenes. It's pretty cool because it's the WandaVision one, they talked about filming during a pandemic. Right. And the same thing with the Falcon and the Winter Soldier one. And obviously they'll have one after Loki. And I've heard rumors they're going to do one after the movies too. So like after Black Widow comes out, there'll be a Black Widow behind the scenes. I don't know when. It might not be like you watch it on Friday night and see it that night, or it will be a couple weeks later. But those are kind of cool too, because I'm a big fan of that.
Oh yeah, and on the Star Wars side, even like there's behind the scenes, as you've said, but just anybody trying it out, they even have these things now like fly-throughs.
Yes.
And you just put it on your TV in the background and it loops, but it's just these amazing, like well-known scenes like Hoth, and it just kind of, it's like a screensaver, flies around. And then there's the thing about Galaxy's Edge. Yes. And watch that just so that you know where your $5,000 is going in the next couple of years, because that's exactly definitely going.
100%. And they're going to be doing one with Marvel. They're opening Marvel World and stuff like that in California, and so on. So it's definitely one of those things that, like I said, I don't see myself ever canceling it. It's not expensive compared to a lot of other things out there for what you get.
Not for the original stuff you get. I mean, like franchises that are. And
it's fascinating because when I was collecting Blu-rays, it was $30 to buy a Lion King Blu-ray when it was $12 to buy every other Blu-ray in the world. And now it's, for me, again, if you go with the package and so on, I think it's like $12.99 or something like that for non-packaged things, but $13 for a month.
Just remember how much the vaulted movies were back in the day. That alone was, you have to wait 10 years.
And so this is one of those things that if you're a big Disney fan in general, obviously you should do it. But if you're even a small Marvel fan or Star Wars fan and want to get into these things, and what I'll tell my dad if he's listening, you can subscribe for a month, watch a bunch of stuff and cancel it. You also can have fun and pay for a streaming service and not buy a coffee.
I cancel mine month to month all the time.
Yeah, so
something new's coming out because I can binge it in a month. And then I go on to the next thing.
And now with the pandemic ending, coming to an end, it will never really be over for a while, but coming to an end and winding down, some of these more things will be coming out. So there may be some other snippets and one shots that come around, Eternals, Black Widow and things like that. So Star Wars movies and Star Wars shows. And I can't, it's fascinating. And for us to have been able to do this show and not just do Loki.
Gosh. What I was going to say, I mean,
it's been an hour and a half.
What do I say? It's been an hour and a half, and like I could go for another
go on,
hour and a half.
Yeah.
Like,
well, I mean, Joe Rogan's podcasts are 4 hours.
But
first of all, for anybody who wants to pick on, I did not comparing us to Joe Rogan.
I mean, right? We're slightly better.
We're slightly better. Yeah, yeah. We make a little bit more money too than Joe Rogan's podcast does. But yeah, so the fact that we probably would have tried to start this with Loki and just talked the first couple of episodes of Loki, and then we would have been in the same tangents and the same conversations. But yeah, we would have probably taken more time to look up the stuff because we didn't have it right in front of us.
Yep.
And we still would have been an hour and a half.
That's what I was telling you this morning.
5 minutes of Loki.
I was like, you know what? I'm going to watch like 5 recaps instead of digging into this. And that's way more fun because like you said, it's more fun to just talk about the
overall,
whole thing
yes.
in general.
And I would love it if we can get Paul into this too. Paul
Yes.
from Galactic Comics, and do a whole because he loves Star Wars too. But like the idea of doing a whole speculation thing. What would you want to see? And just talk about not with Disney Plus, but Star Wars as a whole. You talking about offshoots and the fan novels and fan books and all that stuff. What could they use and what did they pull? And then the Marvel thing about the whole Secret Wars and Secret Invasion. I'd like to see in other different avenues they've gone now. And same thing with this new Venom. Immortal Hulk would be great. And all those kind of things would be great to do. And I think we could definitely do a good hour and a half episode of just speculation of what would be cool to have.
I love it. It's a great thing for the hosts only episodes. I'm just sitting here like jealous of your t-shirt and thinking like we could do a whole episode talking about TMNT starting back in the 80s and up to now. And my gosh, like talk about another universe that's just super
insane.
fun.
Yeah. And we could do that as it's coming up at the end of the year, because I think we have a special guest hopefully at the end of the year.
That'd be super fun.
Some TMNT stuff. But again, there's over and over and over and over again, and they're not going to end. So Loki ends.
Yes.
So technically this episode would come out on Wednesday. The last episode of Loki will be this Friday. And then Black Widow's in the theaters. And then the next series to come out will be What If. So we have a little bit of time between the end of Loki and the What If series, because they actually even announced the date for What If yet. It might be out, but I guarantee we're going to stop recording this and then we're going to get a text on our phone that says What If's coming out this date. But
we should pick one of these, like What If, and one day do like our first like live stream commenting on a show. What If would actually be super fun.
Press play at the same time we press play and watch it.
And watch it live, but like it's shorter, it's animated, it's What If, so you can joke around because it's goofy.
And I think with the movies coming out, Star Wars things and stuff like that. Again, you have a passion for Star Wars and Marvel. I have a passion for that. Those are the kind of things, if you listen to this podcast, you've obviously known with me personally, or when Adam's joined us now, that there could be if Black Widow, if I go see Black Widow or see it at home and it's freaking amazing, I might want to jump on here and talk half an hour about how amazing it is. If it's not so good, probably not, because I don't want to talk about half an hour of it. But I've heard, it's certified fresh. On Rotten Tomatoes, which that's a pretty good website to listen to.
I'm interested in it though. I love that they've maintained that feel though of like the Black Widow and the Captain America feels so like embedded on the planet, and everything else is so like I'm trying very hard, because that's not my big part of Marvel, to like get into that.
Right. And there may be one of those things where at the end of it, I watch it too little too late, because they focus a lot on all the male characters in the first series, and Captain Marvel got her own movie towards the end of the first Infinity Saga. But like Black Widow, this movie probably should have been made in phase 1. And that's where the weird things that I've thought about.
Might be kind of the curtain call for that.
Yeah. And then she's another thing but that's also another thing I'll give Marvel credit for, is kill off the character.
Of course.
Like what I'll give Game of Thrones credit for, I'll give Walking Dead credit for. People die.
Yes.
Like people move on, and you cannot have 10 years of a movie.
In Star Wars.
Yeah, exactly. You can't have that many. How many years has Star Wars been going on and you have the same characters there? You can't, like, in Walking Dead was one of the things that I loved about it, is they're not afraid to kill off characters. They've been on the TV for 11 years in a zombie apocalypse. And for some reason, the main characters are always the ones that get out of problems.
And I'm sorry, I'm not to pile on Star Wars, because as I said in the beginning, that's my obsession. But like, the other thing is, if you're going to say like we should probably kill off some characters, don't kill off the 3 biggest characters back to back in 3 movies, because it's a little weird. I mean, there's subtle ways to do it, but not like, hey, we're going to kill we're going to kill Han Solo in this movie, then we're going to kill Luke, and then we're going to kill Leia. Cool. All right, cool. Good.
And they thinking back on it, they probably should have killed Leia and then Luke, because she actually died. So that's one of those other weird things about it. And again, speculation on Black Panther, what they're going to do with, because Chadwick Boseman died and Black Panther's still alive. So
they're going to do something really incredible with that.
They should, and I think that I just don't know. It's weird, because I hate when I think a lot of people are afraid to kill someone off who's dead.
Yes.
So it's one of those things. Is Black Panther just gone?
Yep.
Or,
I think that franchise is so important for having not only a hero that's a person of color, but that the entire franchise is.
And they're and they're wealthy and they're smart, and they have the technology, and they're of color.
And they're providing, like what, the raw resources for all of these like crazy weapons. And so they're this integral part of it. So yeah, I have a feeling they're going to do something like incredible with the follow-up to Black Panther.
And so that will come out too. So, and we didn't talk about that, but I think we're going to be talking with Josh Molten in a couple of weeks, about a couple months probably, talk about movie releases, because we did a bunch of like, Josh and I have always done things that like past things, like top 10 this, top 10 that. We thought we'd just go together and each one of us would pick
Yeah.
some movies to talk about, and that might be my aspect. I'll talk about the superhero movies that are
Sure.
coming out, and those are Black Panther coming out, and the Marvels movie, and Shang-Chi and all those too that are coming out. But for now, there's a crap ton. I mean, there's 5 shows based on Marvel and on Star Wars
Yep.
that are new on Disney Plus that you can watch. But this is all the Clone Wars is on there, Rebels is on there,
Bad
bunch
Batch.
of bunch of old animated shows for Marvel and stuff that are on Disney Plus as well that we didn't even touch on. And then coming up, it's going to be like, it's going to be right after one after the other. And so if you want to do in-depth Marvel series recap review things, check out the Friends and Work podcast. They're great at the FFW podcast.com, and they're on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts. I like to give them a shout out all the time because they were basically they started small as well, and now they're Hollywood. They've been able to interview some people. The guy who wrote Loki show and who's wrote Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. He's been on their show as well, so which is cool. So Robbie and Kyle, great dudes. They've been on the podcast here back in January. But yeah, check out the Friends from Work podcast for like in-depth actual breakdowns, hour and a half episodes about an individual episode of the show. So that I don't think we'll ever get into that, but doing these bigger overarching things. Doing another one in a couple months, 6 months or so, that talks about what's come out since then and what's coming out in the future, and announcements and stuff like that.
Cool too. But like we said, and we can one day we can move into Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle universe a little bit, and
TMNT. That would be fun to do as a live. We watch the movie.
I was just
original movie.
I'm literally just in my head thinking like, man, like a rewatch of all of the Turtles movies would be amazing.
And no one knows. I mean, we hasn't really done like a walk around of the studio in here, but we're looking at a TV right now, so we could easily. We're looking at ourselves, but we could easily have the TV be the movie.
Absolutely. Instead of I'll bring in when I was going through my comics, I found the adapted graphic novel of TMNT to The Secret Ooze by Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird. There was this like weird, completely separate, them redoing the movie of the property that they had created back into comic book form. And that's just.
And what I have in the other room is the vinyl with special artwork drawn of TMNT, The Secret Ooze, with the green vinyl record of the soundtrack in the other room.
You have that?
I have that.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's the artwork's done by Kevin Eastman on the front, and you pull the vinyl on, and it's like
that's incredible.
Neon green. So
I could go on that fan club site and buy so much.
Well, that's what I said about Ben Bishop. I said another TMNT artist. I was like, can I just like sign my direct deposit over to you?
That's like, a part of my paycheck, and you just send me monthly things.
You know, just every month, just give it to you. You and my tattoo artist.
I know. And I go on there all the time, and I'm like, I could afford that maybe. And then I'm like, hey, Annie, what do you think about this signed special? No.
What? I did that. So Michael Del Mundo we talked about in the comic book episode. We'll finish this up. I'm just rambling now, but Michael Del Mundo was a comic book artist. One of my favorite comic book artists. They did a run of Carnage covers. They're amazing. And I was like, oh, it'd be awesome to have a print signed by him. And he has new prints on there. And there's this really badass one that I was like, oh, I really want to get this. It's a Groot one. And there was another one. I forget what it was, but I added it to my cart, and I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. It's $50. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to do that. And if it's signed and numbered, and this is cool. I don't know if I'm ever going to meet this guy because he's a pretty big artist. So like, he's not coming to Bangor Comic Con.
Right.
And I was like, I don't know. So I go, we add it to the cart, and $20 because it's from Europe. $20 shipping. I'm like, okay, yep, nope. Closed out of this. It's $70. And if I wanted to buy two, I'm like, plus, where am I going to hang this up? I have a box in here that no one can see. There's a bin right here with all these prints and things like that. I can't even hang up right now. So I'm like, what am I going to do with this? I'm spending $70 and put it in a box. Nope, not happening. So I ended up doing the same thing with Kevin Eastman's thing. Oh, there's a sale. It was $75. Now it's $55. I'm like, God damn it. Maybe giving it away. Yeah.
I know. Well, it's like I joined the fan club and got like the 2 comics signed, and I was like, this is the greatest thing ever. And it's like we joke as we nerd out, and I'm like, Kevin Eastman signed this.
Yes. Who's from Maine?
I know, but like I'm Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird is like that. Those names are like emblazoned in my child mind. Like,
and so like you're, oh my God, this is amazing. And it's like I can order anything now from him and sign it. So like to me, it's like this is cool, but also like it's also anything. I could literally, I'm at a finger, like a click of the button, I can have something signed by him, which is insane. And that's what's cool about Kevin, Ben, and some other people now who have been able to do that, and artists who have been able to like interact with the fans. And we're both fan club members of Kevin Eastman. You
should be too.
I'm a member of the Ben Bishop one called Bish Kids, and then Paul's also a Bish Kid. So there's like this cool thing that we do. That's a monthly one, monthly, but I get quarterly boxes that I've done this. Those are awesome. We'll have to go. I did some badass things in there. I had one out here. No, I guess I don't. I had there's a metal print that came with it that was out earlier. I don't know what happened to it, but now we're just rambling. So yeah, thank you guys. I mean, so let's subscribe to Disney Plus, watch some shows, give us feedback what you think about the shows too. And any news we have that comes out, we'll probably try to do something. But I think right now, I'm done. I don't have anything else to say.
Yeah, but that was great. Like I said, it's probably a good time to stop because I could keep talking about this for like 4 more hours.
Yeah. So. And we actually you guys don't know this, we're recording again with someone else after this. So we should probably stop talking for a little bit and take a little break.
Probably.
But yeah, so thanks everybody for listening. Thanks for following. Email us. Like I mentioned in the welcome that Adam wasn't here for because I was trying to get ahead of things. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and watch us on YouTube. And we'll love feedback from everybody. Hello at themainstateofmind.com is our email address. At the Maine State of Mind everywhere. You can follow us online, and you can definitely tell us at the end of the episode. I'm starting to like just be like, and then you can do that if you want. If you want to
go on and comment with your favorite movies. Like that's what you said. You're right. Let's talk about it. What do you think about Star Wars? What do you think about Marvel? Say something controversial.
Blow the whole thing up.
Let's argue. Yeah.
Let's argue. Yeah. That's what the internet's for, right? Arguing.
That's a terrible slogan. Maine State of Mind. Let's argue.
Let's argue. Yeah, there you go. Let's do it. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.